Purdue gets another conference victory, moving to I believe 5-0 in the Big Ten now. They are 15-1 overall, beating Penn State 93-85 in Mackey Arena. A little bit of a how do you say this? A quiet game, kind of energy wise. A game that was never really in doubt, but Purdue could not ever really put that much separation in between themselves and the Nittany Lions. It really led to kind of this odd low energy like game that kind of hung out in the 8 to 15 point mark. I remember whoever's doing play by play hit us with the this game's been in the 8 to 15 point mark or region for a while, and if Penn State could get it in with hit a couple shots there, get it make it a could make it a game, but where Nittany Lions were never really able to, despite Freddie DeLeon able to get going a little bit off offensively, but the Boilermaker offense just a little too strong for Penn State. What did you kind of see in this game from Purdue?
Yeah, it was. I wouldn't say it was a comfortable win, but like you said, the result was really never in doubt. Penn State got up to, I think, like a 27-22 lead, like midway through the first half, and Purdue hit a couple shots and retook the lead pretty quickly and never looked back. But I think the farthest they pushed the lead out was like 12 or 13 points, and every time they did, Penn State would hit another couple of shots and bring that back down to like 8, but they could really never get closer than that in the second half. Like I said, it really never felt like Purdue was in danger of losing this game, but they were never really able to make it a comfortable win either. And as a result, the starters played pretty much the whole game. I mean, Braden Smith played 39 minutes. I believe he sat very briefly in the first half. He was spectacular. We'll talk more about him here in a second. But I mean, the main reason he didn't come off the floor was because Painter couldn't afford to have him off the floor. This was never the type of lead where you could sit Braden and let Omer run the show for a few minutes. If they did that and the offense hit a speed bump, Penn State could have taken the lead.
Yeah, I was actually pretty impressed by the Penn State showing. I think just to start it off, I mean, Freddie DeLeon, good player. I mean, 25 points is really the engine for the Penn State offense. But other than that, it was a really balanced attack. You've got DeLeon with the 25, and then you look down the box score a little bit, and Tunka had 14, Rice had 11, Urick had 9, Reed had 8. Like, it's a very balanced kind of attack from Penn State, and I think it kind of speaks a little bit to Purdue's defense, which I think in large part was pretty poor. I think that was kind of the reason for Purdue not really being able to kind of push this game away. I mean, they were scoring, they were efficient. They shot 73% from 2 point range, 38% from three. It's kind of becoming a little bit of a trend this year, but shot 43% from the free throw line. Obviously, they haven't been that bad this year, but free throw shooting is starting to become somewhat of a concern, I think, for Purdue. But other than that, offensively, just a really, really good offensive game. I mean, that was the reason that Penn State was never really able to get all that close. It wasn't because Penn State wasn't hitting shots. It's because they weren't getting stops. And, on the other end, Purdue was not really able to get stops either. And that's kind of not a great sign, but the first kind of bad data point in the large stretch of good data points for a defense that started to grade out as elite.
Yeah, I've come on here and talked about my concerns with this Purdue defense for a couple weeks now, and I know that's not a popular take when Purdue's defense is metrically grading out pretty well and visually looking better on the court, but all the issues that we sort of hypothesized might be issues for the defense coming into the season have largely played out to be true. It's just Purdue's patched over them with enough in other areas to kind of hide some of their defensive deficiencies. The main reason for that, I think, is improved perimeter defense. CJ Cox is legit turning into like a shutdown perimeter defender that you can put on a team's best player. And that really helps kind of cover up some of the other weaknesses this defense has. But in this game, Cox was not great defensively. He drew the DeLeon assignment. And in CJ's defense, DeLeon was much bigger, just a bigger body, but Cox couldn't really stay in front of him, and he kind of got downhill at will. And when Purdue was allowing dribble penetration by guards, there's just no rim protection there. Daniel Jacobson obviously is the guy you hope can do that, but the issue is that he has other deficiencies in his game that mean he gets played off the floor sometimes. And we're seeing that pop up more now in Big Ten play. He only played 10 minutes in this game. Now, part of that was because Clough was phenomenal offensively, and Purdue just didn't want to take him off the floor. But he only had 2 rebounds, didn't block a shot. Um, the physicality of the Big Ten is getting to him, which we kind of suspected it might. He really feels like a player who's a year away from being a impact player. 25, 30 minutes a game impact Big Ten starting center. But when he's on the floor, Purdue just has no rim protection at all. Clough had 1 block in this game, the only block Purdue had. If guys are able to get into the paint, there's just not a lot stopping them from scoring at the rim, and Penn State did that all game long. And even when they weren't scoring, they were kicking out to open shooters and shot 44% from 3.
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it. The positional size was, I think, really exploited by Penn State in this game, and part of it was Purdue, I think, just not being super intentional and not being super focused on the defensive end. It was, in my opinion, a relatively poor performance from the Purdue defense, but I do think that Penn State, with their positional size, were able to create some mismatches and some advantages. And we haven't really talked about it yet, but they also out rebounded Purdue. 28-27 on the glass. We haven't really seen Purdue have that happen, especially since Trey Kaufman-Renn has been back in the starting lineup. I mean, this Purdue team has been dominant on the boards, and this is a Penn State team that also out rebounded Michigan, so they're definitely one of the stronger points of their game is on the glass. But getting out rebounded by Penn State is certainly a recipe for keeping a game really close, or a lot closer than it should be in Mackey Arena against a kind of inferior opponent.
Yeah, I mean, 55 combined rebounds between the two teams just goes to show how few rebounds were available in the first place. I mean, both teams were just making a ton of shots. Penn State had 5 offensive rebounds, so it wasn't like Purdue was giving up tons and tons of second chances, but they only had 8 offensive rebounds themselves. Like, they weren't able to generate a ton on the glass. Trey Kaufman and Oscar Clough each had 4 offensive rebounds. No one else had a single one. Purdue's bigs were able to impact things in the glass, but it wasn't a great rebounding performance from, the rest of Purdue's sort of complementary players. CJ Cox had 4. Braden just had the 1. Jakari had 1. Like I said, Jacobson had 2. Penn State was able to match Purdue's physicality, even exceed it in some places. And, the thing that critics of Purdue have said in the last couple of years is that teams with size and athleticism throughout their lineup can cause Purdue some problems. And while that is somewhat overblown, I think we can all agree that, Purdue is able to beat more athletic teams all the time. That's the sort of unanswered question that Purdue's going to have to answer in the tournament this year is, can they win a title with an athleticism disadvantage in some of the big games? And we, against UConn, the national title a couple of years ago, we saw that was an issue where Purdue or UConn was just so much bigger and more athletic at the wing and guard spots than Purdue and really overwhelmed them in that area. And with teams like Arizona and Michigan, and we saw Iowa State employ something similar in Mackey earlier this year. Like, those are the teams that Purdue's going to have to prove, in a game like this, they just outscored Penn State and it didn't matter. They may have to do that again down the stretch in a bigger game.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all. I mean, this team has been really kind of built to be a team that creates separation through scoring. And when they're not hitting shots, when they're not, kind of being that number one level offense that they kind of build themselves to be, it's not quite the elite team that, some of these other teams are when the offense isn't going. Like, you think of teams like Houston or Michigan, for example. Like, these are teams that do have an awesome offense, but a somewhat inconsistent one. And when that offense slows down, they can win games to their defense, and Purdue's just not going to be able to do that. I think if I was to frame this as in like a should we be concerned, this is a Penn State team that came into this game shooting around 33% from 3, that shot 44%. However, that's partially due to Purdue's defensive scheme. They're going to give up some open threes and, kind of bet on shooting percentages a little bit, especially against these inferior teams. And, To some extent, it's a good thing that I think you can get out of a conference game in which you don't feel like you played very well defensively, and the other team shot much better than you kind of expected, and you still kind of get out of the game with an 8 point win that was never really in doubt. That feels like an important data point in how much Purdue's floor has been raised, and kind of that's a good transition because the guy that has raised the floor the most, in my opinion, is Oscar Clough, who was probably the second best player in this game in a Purdue jersey, at least that is. Had 23 points on 10 for 11 from the field, was just 3 for 6 from the free throw line, but 23 points nonetheless. Had 9 rebounds and 4 assists to go, or sorry, that's Trakoff and Wren's rebounds and assists. He had 7 rebounds and 2 assists to go along with it, as well as Purdue's lone block. He was dominant offensively in this game. What did you see from him? Why do you think that he's kind of, raised Purdue's floor so much?
He is such a great play finisher around the rim at the center spot, and Purdue just didn't have that last year. Obviously, Edie is another animal entirely when it comes to that. And before Edie was Travion and all those guys. But last year was the first Purdue team in a while that didn't really have a play finisher, a go-to guy, a lob threat at the center spot. And Clough has fixed all that and then some. He's a plus rebounder, grabbed 7 in this game. 23 points, one of his best offensive outings in a Purdue uniform. And this is what he did at South Dakota State last year. I mean, he just impeccable footwork around the rim, great touch around the basket, gobbles up rebounds. He's a post scorer, but Purdue doesn't have to feature him in that role the way they featured Trey Kaufman-Renn last year. It's sort of almost he scores by osmosis, and there was definitely an emphasis throughout this game to feature him a little bit once he's really started clicking and dominating the Penn State bigs down low. But it wasn't like Purdue came into this game plan like, all right, we're just going to feed Clough in the post and let him go one-on-one. Sort of how the game played out. And to that point, Trey Kaufman-Renn with just 7 points on 6 shots in this game. Did have 9 rebounds and 4 assists and a steal. Didn't turn the ball over after having 6 turnovers against Washington. He played a really fantastic complimentary game, I thought, to Clough. One thing while I was watching this game, Penn State was sending hard double teams at him immediately after catching the ball. It was very similar to what Purdue did to JT Toppin, if you think back to the Texas Tech game, where no matter where he was on the floor, as soon as he caught the ball, there were 2 guys in his face. And Trey didn't turn the ball over. He had some incredible cross-court passes to open shooters. He hit Braden in the corner early in the first half on just like pocket pass from the opposite wing. And then I had another one to Fletch in the second half that I'm not sure if that one went down, but he just played within himself, and a lot of Clough's opportunities would come when they would set a hard double at Trey and leave Oscar one-on-one with a guy who had no chance of checking him that close to the rim.
Yeah, this would have been a great game plan, I think, against Purdue last year, but with the addition of Clough this year, you can't really do it and expect to still string together a ton of stops because this Purdue team is good enough, especially with CJ Cox playing the way that he is, that you can't really afford to play this team 4-on-3 when they have the ball and doubling TKR like they did. While it did kind of take Trey Kaufman-Renn out of the game, it just allowed guys like Braden and Clough to get going, and to a point that this offense couldn't be stopped. You mentioned Clough's finishing. He's up to 74.5, but 75% from the field this year. Just otherworldly efficiency numbers. He's the number 1 player per offensive rating in the country. Just as much as you could ask for and more from a guy out of the transfer portal coming up from the kind of Summit League, where Summit League transfers have not had the best hit rate, but he has 100% hit for Purdue. And to your point on Trey, I think you're completely right. Like he was doubled on the catch the whole time. I'm not sure how people expected him to like kind of impact this game other than what he did. And what he did was, he didn't turn the ball over at all. He handled the double teams as well as you can ask him to, and made some pretty awesome passes out of it. And I think his stat line kind of reflects that. Like last year, he was asked to kind of score and not do a whole lot else. And that meant that when he didn't score, his stat line was not very good. And now there weren't very many games where he didn't score because he was such a high volume guy. But like this year, 7, 9, and 4. That's all Purdue needed out of him today and or on Saturday, and he gave it to him, and he gave it to Purdue in an efficient manner, and kind of played his role and kept the ball moving, and that's why Purdue's been so good this year.
There was only one game last year which Trey didn't score in double figures. He had 9 points against Indiana and Bloomington, in a game where he very famously fouled out pretty early on. Um, he's had, I mean, you can look through his game logs. He's had a bunch of those games this year, but because he's rebounding so much better, he's being asked to be a little bit more of a playmaking hub lately. Um, he's finding ways to impact the game. Um, I mean, looking through his game logs, this is only the second game this year that he's not been in double figures, which is a little bit surprising given he's only averaging like 13 and a half points per game. He had 4 against Iowa State. And probably the only game this year where you'd say he played pretty poorly. But yeah, he was fantastic in this game. But I think we've gone long enough without talking about Braden Smith. 15 minutes into our Penn State recap, and we finally get around to the Big Ten Player of the Week, who had 26 points, 14 assists, just 1 turnover, along with 2 steals and a rebound. I mean, just absurd numbers. Purdue in general, 25 assists to 3 turnovers is just ridiculous efficiency on the offensive end. And Braden Smith was at the center of that, 14-1. I mean, that's insane. And scoring 26 with that, 26 and 14 is one of the more ridiculous stat lines from any players had this season. There's been a lot of talk about how, Braden's been asked to do less on this team because guys around him have gotten more talented. You mentioned CJ Cox, who's a 40% three-point shooter, who's finally more comfortable taking a more active role on offense. Obviously, Fletcher Lawyer is shooting volumes up, and he's maybe the best shooter in the Big Ten. Oscar Clough and Trey Coughlin-Wren, one of the arguably the best scoring duo in terms of post players in the country. And with all that, Braden has taken on a less direct scoring role this season. And other players, when you have Cam Boozer, who's the runaway favorite for National Player of the Year right now, and other guys like JT Toppin and Yaxel Lenneborg who are in that conversation as well. It's time to put Braden back in that conversation. I don't know if he'll win it. Like I said, Cam Boozer is pretty clearly ahead of the field right now. But if nothing else, I mean, he's back in the driver's seat for Big Ten Player of the Year. 26 and 14, just ridiculous stuff.
Yeah, I mean, back in the race on KenPom Player of the Year for sure. He's now back up into 4th behind Boozer, Joshua Jefferson, and Debanza. So he's starting to get a little bit of love, and betting odds, I believe he's also up to 4th as well. So our guy's starting to get a little bit of love in that market. Yeah, I mean, you said it. He was spectacular. KenPom MVP for good reason. Just he's such a good scorer, and I think we all forgot about it. Like the midi is ridiculous. It's awesome. It's unstoppable, and it feels like it's going in an incredible clip right now for how tough of a shot it is. He got the 3-point shot working again tonight too. 4 for 8 from 3. High volume too, which I like. Like, this is a 40% 3-point shooter. Let it gun a little bit. Shoot the ball. And he made Penn State pay. Like, they turned him into a scorer again. They kind of tried, I think, to limit like the ball screen action, at least with Trey Coughlin-Wren, with doubling the roll guy, and it didn't really seem to affect him at all, and he got his 14 assists anyway. I mean, it just absurd numbers. The passes he makes on a possession by possession basis, just a ridiculous level of difficulty at this point. Like, there's no one else in the country that's coming close to the level of difficulty on the passes that he's making at the moment. Just hard to put into words what he did on Saturday afternoon in Mackey Arena. Just an incredible Player of the Year worthy performance for sure.
Yeah, if he does win some postseason awards, which he'll win something, I'm sure. This is the game that's going to be circled, and the people are going to be talking about is like, I remember we had 26 and 14 against Penn State, like that. Just absurd efficiency. And on a night when Purdue didn't get much scoring wise from their bench, or really much in general from their bench, 4 combined bench points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and 1 steal was the entirety of the bench production. And much of that was Jakari Harris, who I thought played a pretty good game, even if he didn't take many shots. The Purdue starters needed to step up. and score. And Braden had 26, Clough had 23, CJ Cox had 16, Fletcher Lawyer had 17. I mean, we talked about Stray having 7 and not really getting the scoring column. All of the rest of Purdue starters were phenomenal, efficient scorers in this game. Purdue starts 40% 3-point shooters at the 3 guard spots. And I'll be the first one to tell you, playing 3 guards in the lineup is going to put you at a disadvantage against some of the bigger, more athletic teams Purdue might face. But it also gives you a big advantage in other areas of the game if all 3 of them can shoot like these guys can.
Yeah, I mean, it really makes up for the lack of size when those 3 guys go 11 for 24 from 3. And that was a very repeatable performance. Like Braden shooting 4 for 8 on pretty open, mostly catch and shoot threes is very repeatable. Like we know especially catch and shoot, is one of the elite catch and shoot guys in college basketball from 3-point range. His 3-point percentage takes a little bit of a dip because he takes some of the off the dribble, a little bit tougher shot quality threes, but he's up around 50% on catch and shoot threes, I believe. Fletcher is a guy that can go 4 for 8 from 3. Like he's about in between a 40 and a 50% 3-point shooter over the last couple of years. So it doesn't shock me at all to see him at 4 for 8. And CJ Cox, like you mentioned, that's a 40% 3-point shooter. And when he's taken 8 threes, like that's great volume from 3 elite shooters for Purdue. And when you have that sort of volume from 3 elite shooters like that, it's a really, really tough offense to beat, especially when you factor in the ability for the front court to get going. I mean, it really speaks to how good this Purdue offense is. And I think with CJ in specific, like he has made a big jump this year. I think even not even just from last year to this year, from the beginning of this year to now, there's a clear step kind of. I think you saw it in the Bahamas trip when PJ made a point to really run some action for CJ early in the Memphis and the Texas Tech game, and it got him some easy looks. It got him going offensively. You saw him, I think it was the Texas Tech game, open up with like 7 straight points, and he started to be this true 5th starter for Purdue that is demanding of 30 minutes per game, that is a guy that's starting to give you production. I mean, his points per game are going way up now that we're hitting conference play and we're playing power conference opponents on a night to night basis, and he's doing it without the efficiency dropping at all, which is super important because it's not like this is a guy who's starting to take a few more shots and the points per game is going up, but now a 42% 3-point shooter is a 35% 3-point shooter. No, this is a guy who's starting to produce double figure nights consistently, and he's doing it while shooting 40% from 3 and keeping the percentages high and playing elite defense. And him taking a step, I think, is big for Purdue, especially come March.
He's averaging 9 points a game, shooting 40% from 3 on 4 attempts a game. Like, that's pretty spectacular efficiency. And like you said, the fact that he's taking a step up in production without the efficiency dropping off is huge. We saw last year with 2 guys who were super valuable role players, hyper efficient 3-point shooters in limited volume as freshmen, and Miles Colvin and Cam Heide. When asked to play bigger roles, their efficiency plummeted. And, they've now both transferred and gone elsewhere and are both thriving their own way. Miles is playing an inefficient scorer off the bench, microwave guy at Wake Forest. And Heidi's basically just himself. He doesn't take many shots, but he impacts the game positively in other ways for Texas. But Purdue was looking for one of them to step up into a larger role and take on more shot volume last year, and they couldn't do it while maintaining their efficiency. And CJ Cox is doing that. Over his last 3 games, he has 16, 11, 14, 4 against Kent State, 14 against Auburn. He has 7 games this year in double figures, and 4 of them have come in the last 5 games. As we've entered Big Ten play, he's stepping up and taking on more of a scoring load, which is a perfect role for him. He's not going to be a plus passer, and he doesn't need to be playing next to Braden, but he's not the sort of offense like Omer Meyer type. If he's playing next to Braden, we're you're looking for a bunch of secondary playmaking. He's a defense first, 40% 3-point shooter who is great off the dribble. He's one of the best off dribble scorers on a team with some guys who I think are less efficient doing that. He's pretty efficient off the dribble, as well as catch and shoot. So I think CJ Cox, you mentioned this to me right before we started recording. that it's time to just play him 30 a game. And with you on that, there's enough bench minutes between the time that he and Fletcher will take off because they're both not going to play 40 minutes a game, right? You can get Jakari Harris 15 minutes backing up both of them, and I think that's kind of where we're at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think this minute split is pretty close to what I would kind of hope for, and going forward. I mean, Braden 39, ideally you're probably to a point, hopefully by the end of the year, where Braden can play like 35 and get Omer kind of 5 minutes at the backup point guard, and get Braden a little bit of rest, protect the body from wearing down. But yeah, like Jakari was at 14 minutes, Omer played 9, CJ played 26. I think we need more of that and less of the 2020 and 15 kind of minute split that we've been seeing previously. And listen, like I know you mentioned we're not asking a ton of CJ in the kind of secondary playmaking department, but I think he's giving it to us. He had another assist in this game, and he's not a super high assist guy, but he hasn't turned the ball over since November. I mean, this is a guy who's gone 9 straight games now without a turnover, and that ties into the kind of efficiency. Like he's been able to just go up in production, and I think there's been a couple of times where he's shown some a little bit of this secondary playmaker role where we haven't seen that before, and that's kind of come in the last couple of games. And as he's done that, he hasn't turned the ball over. He's not doing stupid things. He's just such an intelligent basketball player, and that fits so perfectly next to a team of 3 hyper intelligent basketball players in Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Trey Kaufman-Renn. And he's someone who does it while being a change of pace guy and bringing something different that those 3 don't have. And that's the elite perimeter defense this team needs.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this at the top of the video. He was not great defensively in this game, but on the season, he's been fantastic. Um, you know, he's averaging 1.2 assists per game, but in the turnover department, he's averaging just a third of a turnover a game. And like you said, it's been a long time since he's had one. That's exactly what they need from him. Make the open passes when they're there, shoot the ball when you're open, play hard defense, don't make mistakes. And he's doing that. And he's a guy that you're like, setting even this year aside, looking forward when, he'll be the only returning starter next year for this Purdue team. Like he's going to be a veteran, be a junior at that point, veteran leader. We'll see what happens with some of the depth around him if Jakari ends up starting or potentially transferring or where some of these chips end up falling. But on a senior-led team, on a team that starts 4 seniors and 1 sophomore, the sophomore is growing up before our eyes and becoming a really valuable piece of this team.
Yeah, I mean, it's starting to really materialize in front of us what CJ Cox looks like in the future. Like, I think you're starting to see a path forward where he is one of the leading scorers on a pretty dang good Purdue team, because I do think that his ability to score, coupled with his ability to take care of the ball, adding in the elite defense, makes him a really easy guy to fit into a lot of different roster combinations, and it really opens up your options kind of elsewhere in the lineup. And I think having a core of him and Jacobson going forward and being able to fill in around him, and obviously like you've got a guy like Omer who's expected to be a big part of next year. But when I think of kind of the 2 intangible, like the 2 guys in the top 6 of this team that are coming back are CJ and Daniel Jacobson. If you want to include 7, you'll have Jakari, and those will be kind of the 3 guys who will have experience in the program, who've been here for, it'll be their 3rd year next year and going forward. And I think that like having those 3 guys who are pretty good on both sides of the ball, and especially CJ, who's becoming this volume scorer who can score from anywhere and defend with the best of them, it gives Purdue so many options going forward, roster building wise, and kind of makes that spot at the 4 next year potentially very, very intriguing to some high level transfers coming to play next to guys like that. And, it's a big thing going forward, and it's kind of very, very fun to watch it happen right in front of you in an era where you don't see that all that often with guys leaving. Kind of CJ being the homegrown story. Another guy for Purdue, another diamond in the rough, find him out of nowhere, and he's there for 4 years and develops into a really awesome player. And it's really good to see out of him.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. CJ's become one of my favorite players, so I'm excited to see him perform well. And one of those two guys, three if you want to include Omer, but one of CJ Chikari and Omer emerging as a reliable contributor at the two guard spot was something that we kind of expected we'd need to see if this team was going to go on to win a national title. And CJ being that guy, I think is great for everyone involved because he's also the best defender of the bunch. So with that, I think 30 minutes is probably enough time to dedicate to a Penn State recap. But we have a game against Iowa on Wednesday night, and Joey and I will be back to preview that before too long. So keep your eyes out for that, and we'll see you next time.